It started with something that didn't look like a change. That was the first problem. If it had been obvious, I would have noticed it immediately. If it had been wrong, I would have corrected it without thinking. But it was just adjusted. "I fixed your calendar," she said. The sentence didn't interrupt anything. It didn't demand attention. It just entered the room and settled there, like something that had always been true. I was sitting near the window when she said it, my phone resting on the arm of the chair, screen dark, untouched for a few minutes longer than usual. "What do you mean?" I asked. Not because I was worried, because I was trying to understand what fixed meant. She walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands slowly, the same way she always did after washing something. There was no urgency in her movements, no sign that what she had done mattered. "You had a couple of things overlapping," she said. "Nothing serious, I just moved them." Moved them. The words sounded simple, clean, like something practical, something helpful. I nodded, because that made sense. Schedules overlap, times get mixed up, it happens. "Okay," I said. And that should have been the end of it, but it was, not really. A few minutes later, without thinking about it, I reached for my phone, not to check anything specific, just to look. To confirm that everything was where it should be. I opened the calendar, scrolled through the day, slowly, more carefully than I usually would, and everything looked normal. That was the second problem. There was no sign of change, no difference that stood out, no moment where I could say, "This was here before." Doctor at 10, call at 2, a reminder at 6. All of it aligned, clean, logical, exactly the way a schedule should look. And because it looked right, I accepted it, without question. That evening I checked again, not because I needed to. Because I wanted to be sure. There was something about the way she had said it. "I fixed your calendar," not "I helped," not "I adjusted something small," fixed, as if something had been wrong. As if something had needed correction. I sat on the couch, phone in my hand, scrolling through the next day. Doctor at 10, still there, unchanged, certain. I stared at it for a few seconds longer than necessary, because something about it felt placed, not added, not created, placed, like it had been moved into the right position. Not because I had put it there, because someone else had. I locked the phone, set it down, told myself it didn't matter, because everything was correct, because nothing was missing. Because nothing had gone wrong, and that's how it begins, not with something broken, with something that looks better. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual, not by much. Just enough to notice, the room was quiet. The light coming through the window felt the same, everything looked the same, but something felt slightly off, not wrong, not enough to name. Just different. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, trying to understand it, trying to place it, but there was nothing clear, so I stood up, went through the usual routine. Coffee, shower. Getting dressed, everything exactly as before, except I checked my calendar twice. The first time was automatic. The second time wasn't. I unlocked my phone, opened the app, looked at the time. Doctor at 10, I locked the phone. Then a few minutes later, I opened it again. Same screen, same time, same certainty, and still something didn't feel fixed. It felt confirmed. Like I wasn't just checking what I already knew, I was making sure it stayed the same. I left the apartment around 9:30, walked toward the clinic. Same path, same pace, nothing unusual. Except I kept thinking about the time. 10, exactly. I arrived early, sat down in the waiting area, looked around. People sitting quietly, phones in their hands, magazines untouched on the table. Everything normal. At 9:52 I checked my phone again. Doctor at 10, still there, still certain. At 10:08 I looked up. No one had called my name. I glanced at the receptionist. She was typing something, focused, unbothered. At 10:14 I stood up, walked to the desk. "Hi," I said. "I have an appointment at 10. She looked at me, then at her screen, then back at me. "You're early," she said. I frowned. "My appointment is at 10. She shook her head slightly. "No, it's at 11. The sentence landed slowly, because it didn't match, not just the time, the certainty. I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar, held it out. "Look," I said. She leaned forward, looked at the screen, then back at me. That's not what we have, she said. I stood there. Phone in my hand. Screen still open, doctor at 10, clear, unchanged, and yet not real. Did it change? I asked. She checked again. No, she said. It's been at 11 all week. All week. The word stayed, because that meant something. That meant it hadn't moved. It hadn't been adjusted. It hadn't been fixed. It had been stable. And my version was the one that was. I stepped back, sat down again, looked at the phone. At the time, at the certainty I had trusted, and for the first time I felt it clearly, not confusion, not frustration, something else, a shift. Because now the calendar wasn't just something I checked, it was something I had followed, without question, without doubt, without noticing that it might not be mine. I didn't leave. That was the first decision I made after she told me it had always been at 11. Not because I had anywhere else to go, because leaving would have ended the moment, and I needed to stay inside it. To understand it, I sat back down in the waiting area, my phone still in my hand, the calendar still open on the screen. Doctor at 10. The number didn't change, it didn't adjust. It didn't correct itself, it stayed exactly where it was, and that was the problem, because something that's wrong usually reveals itself, it glitches, it updates, it fixes itself, but this didn't. It stayed certain, and that certainty felt artificial. I locked the phone, then unlocked it again. Opened the calendar, same time, same entry, no difference. No indication that anything had been moved, or edited, or changed. I scrolled back a few days, then forward again, looking for something, anything, a pattern, a trace, but everything looked clean. Organized, logical, too logical, like it had been arranged, not by accident, not by me, by someone who knew exactly how it should look. At 10:27 I checked the time again, still early, still waiting. And now, waiting felt different. Before, it would have felt like a mistake. Now it felt like confirmation. Confirmation that something didn't match, that something had been placed incorrectly. Or correctly, depending on which version you believed. At 10:42 I stood up again, walked slowly around the waiting room, not because I needed to move, because sitting still made the thought louder. More present, I looked at the other people, each one waiting, each one certain about why they were there, because their time matched, because their version matched the system, and mine didn't. At 10:52 my name was called. I turned immediately, because now this part was real. This part couldn't be adjusted, couldn't be moved. I followed the nurse down the hallway, same as always. Same routine, same process, everything normal, except I kept thinking about the number. 11, the real time, the one that hadn't changed, the one that had always been there. While mine had been something else entirely, the appointment itself passed quickly. Nothing unusual, nothing worth remembering, but I remembered everything, not what was said. What had happened before, the moment at the desk, the mismatch, the certainty that had broken. When I left the clinic, I didn't check my phone immediately. That mattered, because before I would have. Automatically, without thinking. Now I hesitated, just for a second, because I wasn't sure what I would see or if I wanted to see it. I stepped outside, stood there for a moment. Then finally took out my phone, unlocked it, opened the calendar. Doctor at 10, still there, unchanged, unmoved, uncorrected, and now that felt wrong, not because of the time. Because of the resistance. It refused to match reality, it refused to adjust, it stayed in place, like it had been set there deliberately. I closed the app, opened it again, same result, same time. Same certainty. I started walking home, slower than usual, because now every step gave me more time to think, more time to go back to what she had said. I fixed your calendar, moved things around, adjusted, and I realized something. She hadn't said she changed one thing, she hadn't said she corrected a mistake, she had said she fixed it. As if the entire structure had been wrong, and she had made it right. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, same place, same posture, same quiet presence. Nothing about her suggested that anything unusual had happened. How was it? She asked. Fine, I said, a pause. My appointment was at 11. She looked at me, not surprised, not confused. Just calm. I know, she said. The answer came immediately, without hesitation, without thought, like it had already been decided. I stared at her. Because now that sentence mattered more than anything else. You knew, I asked. She nodded. Yes. Silence, because now there was a gap, not in time, in information. Then why does my calendar say 10? I asked. She didn't respond immediately. She looked at the counter, at the cup in her hand, then back at me. I moved it earlier, she said. The sentence landed slowly, because it didn't explain anything. You can't move an appointment, I said. She smiled slightly, not dismissive, not defensive, just certain. I moved it in your calendar, she said, and that was the moment. The one where something shifted completely, because now it wasn't about the appointment, it wasn't about the time. It was about the version I had followed, the one I had trusted, the one that had led me there an hour early, and she had created it, quietly, cleanly, without leaving a trace. I didn't respond right away, because what she said didn't fit, not into anything I understood about how things worked. I moved it in your calendar. The sentence was simple, too simple. Like it explained something that didn't need explaining. But it didn't. It created something else, a gap, between what was real and what I saw. I stepped further into the kitchen. Placed my phone on the counter, screen facing up, doctor at 10, still there, still certain. I looked at it, then at her. Why? I asked. The question came out quieter than I expected. Not because I was unsure, because I needed the answer to match the action. She wiped her hands slowly on the towel, set it down, turned toward me. You had things too close together, she said. It made more sense this way, made more sense. Another one of those phrases. Clean, logical, unquestionable, but it didn't match, not this time. There was nothing before it, I said. My morning was empty, she nodded. I know, then, but now you have time. Time, the word landed strangely, because I already had time. Nothing had been taken away, nothing had been added. Except the idea that something needed to be adjusted. That doesn't make sense, I said. She didn't argue, didn't defend it, just looked at me. Calm, steady. Like she was waiting for me to see it differently. You weren't using your mornings well, she said. That was new. Not about the calendar, about me, about how I used something, measured, evaluated. Placed into a structure I hadn't created. I was fine, I said. She nodded. I know, always the same answer. Then this is just better. Better, again, always better, never specific. Never defined, just improved. I picked up the phone again, opened the calendar, tapped the appointment, looked at the details. Time 10:00 a.m., no note, no edit history. No indication it had ever been anything else. I scrolled down, nothing, no trace. How did you change it? I asked. She hesitated, just for a second, then said, I just moved it. The same words. Again, I looked at her, because now that wasn't enough. You don't have access to their system, I said. She shook her head slightly. I didn't change their system. She pointed at my phone. I changed yours. That distinction mattered, more than anything else she had said, because now there were two versions, the real appointment and the one I followed. And she had control over one of them, without affecting the other, without leaving evidence, without creating conflict until I saw both. I placed the phone back down, slowly. Because now I needed to understand the structure, not the action, the pattern. You've done this before, I said, not a question, a statement. She didn't answer immediately. Because now there was no reason to hide it. A few things, she said, a few, the same word, always the same, small, contained, manageable. I nodded slowly. Because now that word meant something else, not small enough to matter. What else? I asked. She looked at the counter, at the phone, then back at me. Nothing important, she said. Nothing important. The phrase stayed, because it didn't deny anything. It just minimized it. I didn't respond, because I didn't need to. The structure was already visible. Small adjustments. Quiet changes. No discussion, no confirmation, just done. I picked up the phone again, scrolled through the rest of the week. Appointment at 2, dinner at 7, call at 4, everything looked clean. Aligned, logical, and now that was the problem, because I couldn't tell what was real and what had been arranged. I stopped scrolling, closed the app, then opened it again. As if something would change, as if something would reveal itself. But nothing did. Everything stayed in place, everything stayed certain. And that certainty was no longer reliable. I looked at her. Because now there was only one question that mattered. "Do you tell me when you change something?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now the answer mattered, more than anything else. "Not always," she said. The words were quiet, but they stayed. Because now that confirmed everything, not just this appointment, everything, any entry, any time, any plan. Could be something she had adjusted. Without telling me, without asking me, without leaving a trace, I leaned back slightly, because now something simple had become something else. Not a calendar. A system, not something I checked, something I followed. And if I followed it, I followed her version, not mine. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized something. I wasn't checking my schedule anymore, I was verifying it. And that difference was where it started to change. I didn't open the calendar again right away. That mattered. Because normally I would have, automatically, without thinking. But now, opening it felt like stepping into something I couldn't fully trust. So I left the phone where it was, on the counter. Screen dark, still, and for a moment I just stood there, looking at it, because now it wasn't just a tool, it was something else. Something that could be changed, adjusted, rewritten. Without me knowing. "You're overthinking it," she said. Her voice was soft, careful, placed exactly where it needed to be. I didn't respond, because that sentence didn't belong to me. It belonged to the situation she had created. If I questioned something, I was overthinking. If I accepted it, it stayed. So I stayed silent. And that silence did something, not immediately. But slowly, it shifted the position, not physically, structurally. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to what she said. I was choosing not to. I picked up the phone again, unlocked it. Opened the calendar, because avoiding it wasn't the answer. Understanding it was. I scrolled slowly. One day, then the next, looking for something, anything that felt placed. And that's when I noticed it. Not an appointment, a gap. Wednesday afternoon, empty, completely empty. That wasn't unusual, except it felt wrong. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because now I was trying to remember what was supposed to be there, and I couldn't, not clearly, not with certainty, just a sense that something had been there before. "What did I have Wednesday?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now that question mattered. She walked closer, looked at the screen, then at me. "Nothing," she said. The answer was quick, too quick. I frowned. "I think there was something," I said. She shook her head slightly. "No, simple, final, certain," and that certainty was the problem. Because I wasn't certain, not anymore, I looked at the empty space again, at the blank hours, and tried to fill them, tried to remember, a call, a meeting, something, but nothing came, not fully. Just fragments, unfinished thoughts, things that almost connected but didn't. "I remember planning something," I said. She didn't argue, didn't correct. Just said, "You've been mixing things up lately." Mixing things up. Another phrase, another layer, not wrong, not right, just unclear. I leaned against the counter. Because now that space mattered. Not what was there, what wasn't, and the fact that I couldn't confirm it. "Did you move something from Wednesday?" I asked. She hesitated, just slightly. "Then I adjusted a few things," she said. Adjusted. Again, the same word, the same structure, no detail, no specifics, just change. "What does that mean?" I asked. She looked at me, calm, steady. "It means things are where they should be now." That was the moment. Not because of what she said, because of how complete it sounded. Like there was a correct version, a right arrangement. And she had created it. I looked back at the calendar, at the empty space, at the hours that felt wrong, because now I wasn't just checking what was there. I was questioning what had been there before, and that's where it shifted again, not from action to doubt, from doubt to absence. Something had been removed, and I couldn't prove it. I picked up the phone, closed the calendar, opened my messages, scrolled, looking for something, a conversation, a reminder, anything connected to Wednesday, but everything looked normal, clean. Unchanged, no trace, no mention, nothing that confirmed or denied. I locked the phone, placed it back down, because now the structure was clear, not just moving things, not just adjusting time. Removing, rearranging, rebuilding, without leaving evidence, without creating conflict, until I noticed. And by the time I noticed, there was nothing to compare it to. Nothing to prove it had been different, nothing except the feeling that it had. And that feeling wasn't enough. I didn't say anything else about Wednesday, not right away. Because the more I tried to hold on to it, the less certain it felt. And that was the problem. If something is real, you can return to it, you can point to it. You can say this was here. But this felt like something that had already been erased, not completely, just enough that I couldn't confirm it, so I let it go, at least outwardly. I picked up my phone again a few minutes later, opened the calendar, scrolled to the next day. Thursday, everything looked full, structured, appointments placed cleanly, no gaps, no uncertainty. And that contrast made Wednesday feel even stranger. Too empty, too clean, like something had been removed to make it look right. "What do you have tomorrow?" she asked. Her voice came from behind me. I turned slightly, because now that question mattered, not for the answer, for the structure behind it. I looked at the calendar, at Thursday. Then answered, "Call it 2, she nodded. And before that, I hesitated, just for a second, because now I wasn't sure if I had checked everything. "Nothing," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "You have something in the morning." The sentence landed softly, but it stayed, because now it contradicted what I saw. I looked back at the screen, scrolled up, checked again. Nothing. The morning was empty. "I don't," I said. She stepped closer, looked at the phone, then at me. "You do," she said, same tone, same confidence, not enough to prove it, just enough to make me doubt. I frowned, because now this wasn't like before. Before, something had been there that shouldn't have been. Now something wasn't there that she said should be. "What is it?" I asked. She paused. Just briefly, then said, "A call." I waited, because that wasn't enough. "With who?" She looked at me, then back at the screen. "Insurance," she said. The word landed, because it sounded familiar. Not clearly, but enough, like something I had thought about, or planned, or meant to do, but now I couldn't place it. "I don't see it," I said. She nodded. "I know," then I moved it. There it was again, the same phrase, the same structure, but this time it meant something different. "You moved it where?" I asked. She pointed at the afternoon. Later, I followed her finger, looked at the call at 2, because now that might not be what I thought it was. "Is that the same one?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes." Simple, certain, but I was. I tapped the appointment, opened the details. "Call 2 p.m. No name, no note, nothing that confirmed what it was or what it had been. "Was it always at 2? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Because now the question mattered. "No," she said. "It was earlier." Earlier. That word stayed, because it connected to something, a fragment, a thought, a plan I might have had. Something I had placed in the morning, and now it wasn't there anymore. I looked back at the empty space. At Thursday morning, then at the call in the afternoon. Because now the structure didn't feel clean. It felt rearranged, not wrong, just different. "You didn't tell me you moved it," I said. She nodded. "I fixed it." The same word. Again. Always the same. Fixed. As if the original version had been incorrect. As if this version was the right one. I placed the phone on the counter, because now something had become clear. Not just that things were being moved, that I wasn't being told. Not always, not completely. And each time that happened, I lost something. Not the appointment, not the time, the reference. The ability to know what had changed. And once that's gone, everything feels stable. Even when it is, I leaned back slightly, because now I needed to understand the scale, not one appointment. Not one day, the pattern. "How many things have you changed?" I asked. She didn't respond immediately, because now there was no simple answer. "A few," she said, the same word, always the same. But now I understood what it meant. Not small, not limited, just undefined. And that made it worse, because undefined means anything, anytime, any day, any entry. Could be something she had adjusted, without me knowing, without me seeing, without me having anything to compare it to. I looked at the calendar again, at the clean structure. at the perfect alignment, at how everything made sense. And for the first time, that was what felt wrong. Because real schedules aren't perfect. They overlap, they shift, they leave traces. This one didn't, and that meant something that hadn't been there before, something that had been created, quietly, carefully, without me noticing. Until now, I didn't close the calendar. That mattered because closing it would have ended the moment, and I needed to stay inside it, to see it clearly. I kept the screen open. Thursday still in front of me, morning empty. Afternoon occupied, clean, logical, and now unreliable. I tapped the 2 p.m. call again, opened the details, looked at it longer this time, not reading, studying, looking for something, a note. A timestamp, any indication that it had been moved. But there was nothing, no trace, no history, just the entry, static, final. I closed it, scrolled back to Wednesday. Empty, still empty. Still wrong, I turned toward her, because now there was something I needed to understand. Not what she changed, how she saw it. When you move something, I said, what do you use to decide where it goes? She looked at me, not surprised, not defensive, just calm. What makes sense, she said. That answer came too easily. Too clean because makes sense can mean anything to anyone. At 10 didn't make sense, I asked. She shook her head slightly. You weren't ready for it. I frowned. Because now this wasn't about time, it was about me. What does that mean? I asked. She hesitated just for a moment. Then, you rush in the mornings, she said. Rush, another word. Another observation. Another layer placed on top of something I hadn't questioned before. I don't rush, I said. She nodded. I know, then, but you don't use that time well. Use that time well. Again, evaluation, measurement, not just what I did, how I did it. I looked back at the calendar, at the morning space. Empty, now explained, not because there had been nothing. Because she had decided it didn't belong there. I placed my hand flat on the counter, because now I needed something physical, something stable. Something that didn't move when someone else decided it should. You're not just moving things, I said. She didn't respond, because now there was nothing to deny. You're deciding when I should do them. Silence, because now that was the structure, not adjustment, control. She leaned slightly against the counter, mirroring my position, not intentionally. Just naturally. I'm helping you organize, she said, the same sentence. Again, but now it didn't fit anymore. Because organizing doesn't remove your version, it doesn't replace it. It doesn't create a new one without you. I picked up the phone again, opened the calendar settings, scrolled through options, time zone, notifications, sync, nothing unusual. Nothing that showed what she had done. How are you changing it? I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now that question mattered more than the others. I have access, she said. The words were quiet, but they stayed because they explained everything. Access to what? I asked. She looked at the phone, then back at me. Your account. That was the moment. The one where everything connected. Not just this calendar, all of it, every entry, every change, every adjustment. She wasn't just using my phone, she was inside it, changing it from somewhere else. Without me seeing it happen, without me having control over it. When? I asked. When did you get access? She hesitated, then said, a while ago. A while. The same kind of word as a few. Undefined, unclear, enough to matter. I nodded slowly, because now the timeline didn't need to be exact, it just needed to exist. You didn't tell me, I said. She shook her head. I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered. That sentence stayed, because now it explained everything, not the action, the reason. If it doesn't matter, you don't need to ask. You don't need to explain, you just do it. I looked back at the calendar, at the clean structure, at the perfect alignment, and I realized something. This wasn't the result of small changes. It was the result of ongoing ones, repeated, quiet, continuous, until the entire system looked like this, and I had been using it, following it, trusting it. Without knowing that it wasn't mine anymore, I didn't react immediately. That mattered, because reacting would have placed me inside it again. Inside the version she had created. Inside the structure she had been maintaining, so I stayed still, phone in my hand, calendar open, and for a moment I did nothing. Because now doing nothing felt like the only thing that hadn't been adjusted. You didn't think it mattered, I said. Not a question, just repeating it, she nodded. I was just helping, she said. The same sentence. Again. But now it didn't land the same way. Because help doesn't take access without asking. It doesn't replace your version with another one. It doesn't remove things you can't remember. I looked at the calendar again, then slowly closed it. Because now, looking at it wasn't helping. It was reinforcing something I couldn't trust. I placed the phone down on the counter, screen facing down, not because I was done with it, because I needed distance from it. You changed things without telling me, I said. She didn't respond. Because there was nothing to correct, nothing to adjust, only something to accept. I've been following it, I continued, thinking it was mine. A pause, and it was. Silence. Because now that was the core of it, not the appointments, not the times, ownership, control. I leaned slightly forward, hands resting on the counter, because now this needed to be clear. Do you still have access? I asked. She hesitated just briefly, then yes. The answer came quietly, but it stayed, because now that meant it wasn't over, not yet, not unless I changed it. Can you change it right now? I asked. She looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Yes, that was the moment. The one where something shifted again. Because now it wasn't just something that had happened. It was something that could still happen, at any moment, without me knowing, without me seeing it, without me having any control over it. I picked up the phone again, turned it over, looked at the screen, because now this wasn't just a calendar, it was a system I didn't fully own, and that couldn't stay that way. Take it off, I said. The words came out calm, clear, simple. She didn't argue, didn't question it, she just nodded. Okay. She reached for her own phone, unlocked it, started tapping. I watched. Not closely, just enough to see, because now this mattered, not what she was doing, that it was happening. A few seconds passed, then she said, "Done." I didn't respond. I picked up my phone. Unlocked it, opened the calendar. Everything looked the same. Same entries, same structure, same times. But now it felt different. Not because it had changed, because it had stopped changing. Because now there was only one version. Mine, or at least it should have been. I scrolled through the week again. Wednesday, still empty. Thursday, call it 2, still there. Nothing had reverted. Nothing had corrected itself. Because once something is changed, it stays that way. Even if the access is removed. I looked at her. Because now there was one more thing. From now on, I said, you don't touch it, she nodded. Yes. No hesitation, no explanation, just agreement. Because now there was nothing left to justify, I placed the phone back down, slowly. Because now the structure had changed. Not the calendar, the control. And for the first time since this started, that control felt clear again. I didn't open the calendar again right away. That mattered, because opening it would have pulled me back into it, into the structure, into the version I had been following without realizing, so I left the phone on the counter, screen dark. Still, and for a moment I just stood there, because now something had shifted, not visibly, not in anything I could point to, but in how it felt. The room was quiet, the same as before. But it didn't feel observed anymore. It felt empty, like something that had been there had stepped back. She didn't say anything, didn't move, just stayed where she was. And that silence was different, because before silence had always been followed by something. A correction, an observation, a small adjustment. Now there was nothing. I picked up the phone. Slowly, not because I needed to, because I wanted to choose when I looked at it, not react to it. I unlocked it. Opened the calendar, same week, same structure, same entries, Wednesday still empty. Thursday still set, everything unchanged. And that made sense, because removing access doesn't undo changes, it just stops new ones. I scrolled slowly, looking at each day. Not to check if it was correct, to see how it felt, because now that was the difference. Before I had trusted it, then I had questioned it, now I was measuring it against something else. Something internal, something that didn't come from the screen. I stopped on Wednesday again, looked at the empty space, and this time I didn't try to fill it. I didn't try to remember what had been there, because I understood something. Trying to recover it would just pull me back into doubt, and that wasn't the point anymore. The point was what came next. I closed the calendar, locked the phone, placed it back on the counter, and for a moment I paid attention to what I knew, not what I saw, not what was written. What I knew, I had gone to the appointment. At 11, that was real, I had followed the calendar. At 10, that was also real, both existed, but only one came from me. I looked at her. Because now there was nothing left to explain, nothing left to correct, only something to define. You don't decide things for me, I said, calm, clear, simple. She nodded. Yes. No hesitation. No adjustment, no pattern, just agreement. And that mattered. Because this time it didn't feel like part of something. It felt like the end of it. I walked to the door, opened it slightly. Let the air from the hallway move into the apartment. Then closed it again. A small reset. A boundary, not physical, structural. I turned back toward the room. Everything was the same furniture. Same light, same quiet, but it felt different. Not controlled, not arranged, just mine. I picked up the phone one last time, held it in my hand, looked at the screen, then placed it back down. Because now it didn't need to tell me anything. Not yet. From now on, what mattered wasn't what it showed. It was what I chose to trust. And for the first time since this started, that choice felt clear again.